What's going on, everyone? Will Mitchell here, coming to you from Ambergris Caye, Belize, and we have a new little mini series. Tell us if you guys think this is a good idea. If you want to see more of this, we can do more. But what we've kind of had a discussion to do for you is do a little comparative analysis on Ambergris Caye and Belize versus some other destinations that you might be looking at. There's a lot of people in the region that are looking around saying, is Belize the right place for me? What are the pros and cons of this place? And obviously, we're in Belize, we love Belize, but we want to try to do as good of a job of being unbiased as we possibly can. Obviously, when we came to Belize, we looked at other countries in the region and came to the conclusion that this was the best option for us. Might be something different for you, but a lot of the reasons why we're here, you're gonna see throughout the process of doing the comparative analysis. So we're gonna look at a few different points here. First, when I get into it, I'm gonna talk to you about the similarities, and the first place we're gonna look at is Roatan in Honduras. It's an island, similar size, very close geographical location, reef, diving destination, so it's a great comparable place to start looking at. And then we can go from there. If you have any other destinations you want us to look at, comment them below. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Every time you guys do that, it helps us a lot get our content out and promote the channel. We really appreciate that. We're gonna be comparing and contrasting the places on a few different items. So one would be language, legal system, tax law, ownership rights. We're gonna talk about landlord laws. You know, is it pro-landlord? Is it pro-tenant? Where does that lean? We're gonna talk about average daily rates, occupancy rates, rental income, and break those factors down for you guys so you have a clear perspective and understanding of what the two look like and where the pros and where the cons lie in each one. So without further ado, I want to start just with some of the similarities. So like I said, they're islands that are very similar size. Ambergris Caye is approximately 71 kilometers squared versus Roatan, which is 83 kilometers squared. So they're about 100 kilometers away from each other, maybe a little more, but very close proximity, both in Central America. And we'll talk a little bit about tourism to start. So Honduras as a whole gets just over 2 million annual tourists as of 2019. Obviously in 2020, tourism industry pretty much tanked due to COVID and nothing was there. So that's what we'll look at as 2019. Now, of the 2.3 million tourists, they saw a 6.92% annual growth from the year before, which is pretty solid. And about 23% of those visitors were going to Roatan. So 23% of the people arriving that were visiting would visit Roatan. When you contrast to Ambergris Caye and Belize, we saw just over 500,000 tourists in 2019, and over 43% of those tourists were going to Ambergris Caye. So a larger portion, but a smaller overall volume. Now, what was interesting was the growth rate in Belize and growth rate in Ambergris Caye was 14.6%. So we have a higher annual growth rate of tourism. We're growing at a faster pace, but if you contrast to Honduras, they have a larger volume of tourists. So both have their advantages from the tourism perspective. They're both extremely beautiful tourism destinations, and that's one thing that they really have going for them. When you look at ownership rights, and when we were looking where to go in this region or really where to invest in the world, the foundation is ownership rights. We've had discussions over the past week with some of the guys who work in our brokerage about, as we're going through these analyses, well, what about this market? Is this market, what are the pros and cons? And one of the big ones that is a reoccurring theme is ownership rights. In Belize, as you guys have heard from our videos, it's full foreign ownership, fee simple title. You can have a US LLC, you can have a Canadian corporation on the title, you can have your personal name, whatever entity you want to hold it in, you can do so. And it's the same ownership rights that a domestic local Belizean would have. You don't have to be a resident. You do not have to do it through a corporation. There's no kind of caveats there. It is a British parliamentary democracy. And in this aspect, it is much stronger than Honduras. Now, Honduras, up until 1991, had very heavy restrictions on foreign ownership, especially within beach destinations. To be specific, up to 1991, if you were within 40 kilometers of the Caribbean Sea, Gulf of Fonseca, international borders of Nicaragua, El Salvador, Guatemala, or any islands belonging to Honduras, there was no foreign ownership. As of 1991, they passed the 90-90 decree law, which basically stated that residents, if you were buying a personal residence, they would make an exemption to this law. So owners of personal residence could own the property. Generally, it's still done through a Honduran corporation. It's one of those things that you just have to do it. And it is a Spanish-speaking country. So if you don't speak Spanish, be prepared to handle things legally in Spanish. I mean, they can translate documents, but at the end of the day in these countries, the presiding law is handled in Spanish, and as such, Spanish documents tend to take precedence and over any English documents. So outside of that, for tourism, foreigners could own for tourist projects. If you're building a hotel or something along those lines, you could. So from an ownership rights perspective, there are gray areas. They did pass this law in 1991, which allowed foreigners to come in and own property. But generally, when you're looking at this, ownership rights, that's really the bulk of your investment, is your equity. And if your equity isn't safe, then that's a big kind of no-no for me, where I tend to steer away. So in this case, Ambergris Caye gets the nod. Fee simple title, full foreign ownership is stronger, but Honduras is trending in a direction to make things more achievable for foreigners like yourselves if you are looking to own. Landlord laws. Let's talk about landlord laws. Again, when you're looking to own a real estate investment, if you're doing this for cash flow, rental income, you should be aware of what the laws are, whether they're pro-tenant, whether they're pro-landlord. You know, if you're a real estate investor back home or you've invested in other markets, this is another basis that you look for. You know, is this a tenant favorable environment? Is this a landlord favorable environment? What are the terms for eviction? You know, how much time do tenants have before they have to pay rent? Are there rent controls? These type of things in place that make it hard to be a landlord in those markets. So to break it down for you, in general, Roatan and Honduras is more pro-tenant. The eviction process can be tedious. It can be a hard procedure. It can take a long time. You do have to go through the tenancy tribunal, which can be unpredictable. And basically, it's really in their hands. So they don't have strong landlord rights. If you are looking to rent, it might be a great place for you to go as a tenant. You might find that you're better off, you know, if you do miss your rent or you have some issues making payments, you might be able to stay in your unit for longer. If you're contrasting, Belize is very pro-landlord, and landlords can forcibly enter with a court order and evict tenants from the premises. So in this case, Belize is, if you're a landlord, probably a better option. And if you're a tenant, you might want to look at Roatan. Taxes. So we're going to break down a few key taxes that one might look at when they're making an investment or living in a location, starting with inheritance tax. In Belize, there's no inheritance tax, there's no estate tax. The same thing goes in Honduras. So no inheritance tax, no estate tax. You can pass your things along without any death tax, and that's a great thing. So outside of that, capital gains tax. And what Honduras has done is they've broken it down kind of into non-residents and residents and locals. So there's kind of a two-tier tax system here. In Belize, there is no capital gains tax. In Honduras, they have a 25% non-resident capital gains tax. Moving down the list, income earned by companies is taxed, by non-resident companies is taxed at a flat rate of 25% again. In Belize, it's 3%. If you're looking at net real estate rental income tax for non-residents, it's taxed again at a rate of 25%. In Belize, it's taxed at 9%. So you have to get your hotel tax license, and then there's a 9% tax. So from a tax perspective, if you are a non-resident in Honduras or Roatan, you're definitely going to have higher taxes. Belize is a tax haven with numerous tax incentives, and you can be the beneficiary of that if you navigate the system properly. Rental income in Roatan versus rental income in Belize. ADR, we've broken down occupancy, and then we've done it for bigger versus smaller units as well, so you can get an idea. So this data is taken from Airbnb. We got the total rental units in the market on Airbnb. In Roatan, there's 929 active rentals, which you'll see in the graph we have here, primarily comprised of 2, 1, and 3 bedroom homes, with some larger homes and some studio units as well. When you contrast to Ambergris Caye, we have 392 active rentals currently in the market, primarily really heavily composed of 1 and 2 bedroom, some 3 bedroom, and almost no 4 and 5 bedroom. And we're going to talk about the ADRs for those different types of units and sizes. So for overall ADR, Roatan has a slightly higher overall ADR than Ambergris Caye. So if you're taking every unit type from studio to 5+ bedroom, they're slightly higher. So the nod to Honduras on that. But when you break it down to 3+ bedrooms, like we've talked about in many of our videos, you'll see that Ambergris Caye takes a higher jump and is quite a bit above Roatan in that perspective. So we really recommend looking at the unit type, looking at the count, and breaking it down as such, because what we've seen in this market is a large amount of smaller units that have been built. Generally, when developers come into the market, they want to maximize density. So it's kind of counterintuitive to build a larger home. But if you can build a bigger home, maybe over multiple lots with more amenities, you're going to be in an area where there's lower competition and significantly higher rates with, you know, less overhead and less moving parts, because you're checking in and checking out less people. So it's an easier investment, and in most cases, when you break down the numbers, you'll see you get a higher return. So overall occupancy, you'll see that these graphs run almost, you know, identical, similar along the way throughout the years. As we are both diving tourism destinations, very close proximity, this is something you would expect. And then we have here the overall revenues, which is broken down. So you guys can take a look at all of these graphs, take a look at all the data. If you have any questions on our comparative analysis, feel free to give us an email. If you have questions about Roatan or anywhere in the region, through RE/MAX, we're connected to every country in Central America, every country in the Caribbean. We have agents around the world, and we're happy to facilitate any transactions in the region through the RE/MAX team. As I said, we try to be as unbiased as possible. You guys know I'm a Belize guy. I chose Belize, and every day I'm grateful I did. But we're going to try to break things down unbiased. So just to break it down for you guys and give you an idea of what are some of the things we look at when we're looking to make an investment. These are some of the high-level things we're looking at, and some of the high-level things you guys should be analyzing and looking at as well. If you have any questions, shoot us an email. As always, we're happy to chat. We hope to see you guys down here soon, and can't wait to hear from everyone.